has to be value on the things of God. There has to be value on the gospel. You must solicit value.
There really is no room for subjectivity in the word, unless if your opinion is aligned to the word of God.
We're going to start from the book of Romans, chapter number 1, starting from verse 1. We are looking here, and this is Apostle Paul, and he's writing to the church in Rome. And he says to them, Paul, a servant of Jesus Christ. That's one of the things that he identifies himself with. He says he's a servant of Jesus Christ. You see, every child of God who is a disciple of God should be able to come to Romans chapter number 1 and put their name to say, Tate, a servant of Jesus Christ. And the term servant is not just referring to any type, because there are different types of servants. All servants are not the same. There are servants who do not carry the heart of the master. There are servants who carry the heart of the master. But the term servant there, he literally says, if you look about it in the Greek, in your eastward, it's talking about a slave. He's not just a servant who is just, when you are hired to do stuff. He literally downgrades himself to say, when it comes to Jesus, I understand that I have been bought with a price, and I'm a servant, I'm a slave. The term there is slave, where you would find in the Old Testament, maybe let me show you what he's referring to. He's a slave. He is the one who has literally downgraded his position in Jesus to come to a place of servitude, to come to a place of not just being a servant. He's coming to a place of a slave. If you know one or two things about slaves, you would understand that one thing about slaves is they don't have rights. They do not have rights. They don't have the will of their own. Their existence is at the beck and call of the master. They live for the master. They are under the strict instructions. That's what Paul is saying. He's not just saying I'm a servant. When someone is waitering and they are serving their mark and be. No, that's not what he's talking about. He's saying I'm not just a person. You would find he uses certain terms in the New Testament. He says I'm a bond servant. He describes himself as a bond servant. Someone who understands. When you read the letters of Paul, he understands. He says, present your body as a living sacrifice. Romans chapter number 12, starting from verse 1. Right? Because, he says to them, he writes to them, and he says, he talks to them to say, present your bodies as a what? As a living sacrifice. Because slaves or servants, they are at a level of sacrifice. And he says to them in the church of Corinth, he says, don't you know that you are the temple of the Holy Ghost and you have been bought with a price? So when he's saying bought with a price, he's dealing with the dealings and the transactions that happen when a master buys a slave. That's what he's talking about. I want to show you the scriptures. Let's go to Exodus. Oh boy. I feel it right here. It says, let's go to Exodus, chapter number, maybe let's go to Deuteronomy, chapter number 15. Deuteronomy, chapter number 15, starting from verse, it says, if thy brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee, he's referring to a slave. He says, and serve thee 6 years. In the 7th year, thou shalt let him go free from thee. So what would happen is the 7th year, or it was the year that the year of release, the year of rest. That was the 7th year. You would find that in the 49th year, you would find usually the term Jubilee. Right? Jubilee was the time where, you would let go of the slaves. If people owed you money, you canceled those debts because you were setting everybody free. So he's giving a commandment. Let's go to the next verse. And he says, "Is out free from thee, and thou shalt not let him go away empty." Right? So we are talking about a situation where if someone is serving you, someone is your slave, if they serve you 6 years, service record, the 7th year you let them go. Right? And then he says, but when you let them go, you give them a what? A pension. You give them a package. You give them a retrenchment package. You set them free with something. Right? Let's go to the next verse. It says, thou shalt furnish him liberally out of thy flock, and out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress, of that winepress, the Lord has blessed thee, and thou shalt give him. It says the things that they have labored, the things that they have done, whether it's the winepress, whether it's the threshing floor, the proceeds thereof, you give them so that at least they get some form of compensation or some form of money so that they can start their own life. Let's go to the next verse. And it says, thou shalt remember that thou wast a what? Thou wast a bond man in the land of Egypt, and thy Lord thy God redeemed thee. Therefore I command thee this thing today. So he's telling them, he's literally telling them to say, remember where you come from. You also were treated dirty. You were used to be slaves. So I want you to what? To do better. Don't be like the Egyptians who were not willing to what? To release them. Right? Let's go to the next verse. And it says, and it shall be that ye say unto thee. I want you to look at this. He says, and it shall be that he say unto thee, I will not go away from thee, because I loved thee and thy house, right? Because he is well with thee. He says, so there will be a scenario where someone will say to you that I don't want to go. I want to stay because I what? I love thee. Do you see? And he says, because there will be situations like that. Because the law says in the 6th year, you must release them. And you give them something. But there will be slaves. These are what we call love slaves. Yeah. They are ones who say, because they love their master. Let's go to the next verse. And he says, and thou shalt take an awl and thrust it through his what? Ear. So you take something and then you do what? Ear piercing. You would see even in the old, if you see pictures of slaves, there was a big boring on the what? On the ear. To show that this slave is a free slave, is a love slave. He says, thou shalt thrust through his ear unto the door, and he shall be thy servant forever, and thou and also thy maid servants thou shalt do likewise. So this is what the Lord is saying. This is a love servant. So every time when people identify them, they say this is a person who is not under servitude because of force, but is under servitude because of the love of the master. Let's go to Romans chapter number 1, starting from verse 1. So this is what Apostle Paul is saying. He is saying, I'm a love servant. I love to work for Jesus. I'm like that person who says, as much as he has redeemed me, he has made me free, the love that I have for him, I identify myself as that person who is continually trying to please the master, continually serving the master. So do you see that servants are not the same? They are not the same. Depending on the settings of their heart, in their devotion towards the service of the king. We are not the same. Isn't some people will worship God if God is always doing good things for them, where there are terms and conditions. But you will find there are servants whether they have an increase, there is no increase, there is no bonus, there is no recognition, they still serving. But you can't stand. You can't stand a moment where they don't recognize you. Where it's quid pro quo. The type of relationship that we have with the Lord. If you don't do this, I'm not going to do this. If you do this, I do this. If I do this, I do this. That's how it's tit for tat. Where it's transactional. But this is a love relationship. He was a bond servant. To him, he looked at him as a slave. And he says, and I think that is because you will find even in the writings of Paul, there is this understanding where he says, it's no longer I live, but Christ that liveth in me. The life that I live of the flesh is of the Son of God, who loved me and he gave up himself for me. You will find his writing. He tells them, he writes to the Roman church and says, I die daily. You don't die even in a year. You are not willing to change nothing about your personality. You're not willing to change nothing about your character. Apostle Paul says, I die daily. I'm willing to change. If that thing is making me die inside of me, I'm willing to do that. That is the beginning of transformation. where you understand that you're not perfect and you understand that I need Him, I need His word, His technology to change the fabric of my inside, to change my mindset. But we don't want, we just want people to accept us from the day we were born. We just want our stinking attitude, our meanness. We want to take it everywhere where we go. We're not willing to change. There's no introspection, there's no transformation, there's no renewing of the mind. And you're still a Christian and you still want God to do high things with you. At a level of a man who is saying, I'm willing to die. Even it's about relationships, if the Lord says I don't do it, I won't do it. You, if we tell you to stop that relationship, you kick a fuss. You throw tantrums. And you just want you think we are going to be on the same platform with people like Apostle Paul, where they died, they were beaten, they were in shipwreck. You can't even stand a room with no aircon to worship God. Apostle Paul was in sea 24/7. He was worshiping in sea. He was in prison. When he was writing to the church in Rome, he was writing under chains. You think he was writing, putting full stop? Under chains. That's the only thing he could do. Under chains. Writing to you and I. And when your friend doesn't call you or text you, or your boss doesn't recognize you, you go through depression. And you come and say, Abraham's blessings are mine. I'm a new creation. Definitely you are a new creation. A new species. Definitely you are a new one. That the apostles will be looking, when they are looking in the grandstands, they'll be like, dude, you're complaining about this. And he says, our afflictions. This is our light afflictions. Light afflictions, that's what he calls them. Light affliction.
Thank you for watching. We hope that you were blessed. Please feel free to like, to comment, and to share the content with your friends and family. If you'd like to partner with us, you can find the partnership details in the description box below, and we look forward to fellowshipping with you.